The sun finally came out at the weekend, but unfortunately, the only team having fun in it was the Keighley Cougars, who inflicted a club record defeat on our Coventry Bears. But we're not going to let that get us down. This is the world's greatest podcast about the Coventry Bears. This is Bare Necessities. Welcome to Bare Necessities. We live at covbearspodcast.com. We're at covbearspodcast on Twitter. We're sponsored by the Bears Vice Presidents and by York's Tim. And you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube and anywhere else you get your audio from. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dave Musson, and joining me as always is my right-hand man and former Bears player, Craig Cathcart. Craig, how are you?
Yes, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Aside from the result at the weekend, all good, thank you.
Yes, we'll get on to the weekend shortly, but before we get into that, I want to say at the top of the show that we're very pleased to say that later on, we're temporarily benching Ask Mr C this week for the very good reason that later on we're going to be joined on the show by Rugby League Hall of Famer, Great Britain joint record cap holder, the one and only Garry Schofield, so do stick around for that. But first, we do need to look back on Sunday's game, for which the Bears travelled to Cougar Park to face the Keighley Cougars, and unfortunately, as you've probably gathered and you probably know by now, things didn't go to plan and the Bears came home on the back of a 98-6 defeat, which is a club record loss and a club record win for the Cougars as well. So Craig and I are going to talk a little bit about the game in a moment, but first it feels right to play the post-match interview with Bears head coach Tom Tsang right now. It can't be easy giving an interview right after such a demoralising result. It was tricky enough trying to find the questions to ask him, to be honest, but Tom did give us an interview. He did it brilliantly, and here's what he had to say. Tom, probably a difficult one to reflect on, really. A club record defeat, unfortunately, a club record win for Cougars, but yeah. What do you make of it?
Yeah, tough day at the office, sort of doesn't really do it justice. Look, I'm embarrassed. I think that the whole, speaking for the team there, we're all embarrassed. We're all pretty disgusted with the performance that we put out there. We've got a little bit of soul searching to do this week and work out what it is, but I think I need to sort of get in front of this and take the responsibility on my shoulders as head coach. There's obviously something I've not done and the coaching staff have not done well enough or in the right way to allow this performance to take place, and I take full accountability of the result. I think it's too early to say and it's too raw in the mind to know exactly what that is, but we just need to sit down as a group, first of all with the staff and then with the players and just be honest with ourselves and work out what went wrong, because we can't be satisfied with putting in a inverted commas spirited performance against Widnes and then conceding more points against a team in our own league. There's something not right there, so I need to work out what I did wrong in the build up to this game and be able to put it right.
Do you think there's a question of confidence, well, lack of confidence in the squad at the moment? And if so, what do you think there's anything that can maybe give you that spark that the team might need just to steady the ship and get things back on track a bit?
Yeah, I think we were very down after last week and the manner that we lost the game, and I think whether we overtly said it or not, I think we were hoping that last week could have been the game that turned the corner for us, because we were very close in that game. We all believed that we should have won the game, and we grasped defeat from the jaws of victory, is the saying that springs to mind, and I think that sort of lingered with us. I didn't think it had done, but that might be a mistake and an error on my part straight away when I'm looking for things that I could have improved. So we were very honest with ourselves this week, and we did a very thorough review of the video and the performance from the Scholars game, and we picked out some examples of poor performance, poor process from last week, And I thought that was enough. Maybe it wasn't. It clearly wasn't. There was something, like I said, there's something that I've done and the coaching staff haven't done, which has allowed that performance to take place. So,
in terms of injuries today, it looked like there was a few players who took knocks. I mean, both props had to leave the field within about the first 10 minutes, and I noticed James Mason had a cut on his face. Have you got updates on where you are with injuries?
Yeah, quickly going through. So Dan Gover, who had a problem with an MCL strain a few weeks ago, he's picked that injury back up. We don't know whether it's worse than it was originally or not, but that he'll be out for probably at least three weeks. James Gertchens took a knock to the head, but he was cleared by the doctor on the sideline, so he obviously came back on and was fine. James Mason has had a few stitches just under his chin, but he'll be fine for next week. There's a couple of other bumps and bruises, but I think it's more egos that are bruised and battered at the moment rather than anything physical.
And just to try to end this on something more positive, debut for Jacob Ogden today. I know he didn't get that much of the ball, but from my perspective, I think he looked pretty good when he did get the ball. What do you think he can bring to the team, and is there anything else you can tell the fans about him for ahead of next week?
Yeah, well, he's a very, very strong, powerfully built lad. He can play centre, can play wing, he can probably play in the back row if we needed him to. He's a full-time player at London Broncos. He's obviously on dual reg with us from them. And I agree. I think he was excellent when he had the opportunity, and he just in the change room just now, I nominated him as my man of the match for the game. He got us going forward well, and that's probably one of his best attributes. Is he's powerful in the contact, and he has the ability to get teams going forward and working away from their own try line. Obviously, we didn't give any of our players opportunity to show what they can do in attack this week. So I think it's fair to say that our defence over the last probably 4 to 5 weeks has been nowhere near where we wanted it to be. I think despite them scoring 30 odd points, Newcastle was our best defensive performance, and we need to sort of work our way back to what we were doing well in that game that we haven't been doing of late, and see where we go. But like I said, I'm as the front of the club and the head coach of the team, I take it on my shoulders, and I'll be making sure that I work very hard to put it right.
Tom, as always, appreciate it. I know it's incredibly difficult after games like this, but appreciate your time and look forward to York next week. No problem.
Just last thing I just want to say, apologies to the fans that travelled up. They didn't deserve that performance. So
appreciate that, Tom.
Thank you.
So that was the post-match thoughts of Bears head coach Tom Tsang after the defeat at Keighley at the weekend. Craig, I know you weren't at the game, but you've kind of caught up on the game through various sources. I think we have to give a lot of credit to Tom for the things he's saying in the interview there. I think apologising to the fans that travelled, I think was a very gracious touch at the end, and you know he's not shy in taking responsibility for that defeat, which is kind of what you need as a leader of the organisation, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a really honest interview. You know, Tom's not one to make excuses, and he didn't make excuses for the performance and what happened. You know, and he took, you know, responsibility for it. I'm not sure he necessarily needs to take the whole responsibility, because everyone working at the club's in it together. Tom's obviously a huge part of it, being the head coach, but you know, he was really honest in you know, how he dissected the game, and really honest about where they go from here. And I thought it was a really good insight actually into not just the Bears as a club and as a squad, but into Tom as a head coach. You know, he's not going to overreact and start looking for excuses or start. You know, he'll analyse the game. He'll sit down with the guys and they'll talk about what went wrong and make sure it doesn't happen again. And you know, that's really refreshing to hear, I think. And you know, real big credit to Tom as well for, you know, not once has he ever, you know, said he hasn't got time to do an interview with us. He always does it regardless of the result. And, you know, as I said, he's really honest in his opinions as well. And I get, you know, really good of him to do that.
Absolutely, completely agree. I mean, it would have been very awkward on the bus on the way back if he had said no to an interview, but I totally agree with what you're saying. Now, I mean, what we try and do on this podcast, as is probably the only sane thing we can do when we support a team that's at the stage of development that the Bears are at, i.e. they probably lose more matches than they win. We try to be positive about the Bears, and we try to find positives from every game. And there were positives from this match. Reece Gant's try was brilliant. He showed a really clean pair of heels in attack and just found some space and finished it really well. Ben Stead and Paul Emanuele kicked very well all game. Jacob Ogden, who is a new dual reg player from London Broncos, definitely looked a threat. And there were a couple of other tries that the Bears had that were disallowed as well for knock-ons in the second half. But it would feel forced if we didn't address the fact that there were some big parts of this game that frankly were not good enough. The defence was not good enough. The tackling was poor for most of the afternoon. And Craig, I mean, you've played at least some level of rugby league, so I know it's easy for me to watch from the sides and say that tackling wasn't poor, but wasn't good enough. But I think you would have felt the same, that they ran through far too easily. And what I found slightly concerning, but not overly concerning because it was the first time I've seen it this year, but I did see heads drop this game, and I don't know whether it was because it was just an endless barrage of tries, but it was the first time this season that I've been reminded of the team of last season, and they looked slightly less of a unit than they have been this year.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to get those out there because I think it would be easy for us to just concentrate on some positives and move on. But ultimately, we are two fans of the Bears, and fans are not always positive about their team. And the guys on the pitch will know that Sunday was not good enough, but I think it's worth us having it on record that it wasn't good enough from our point of view as well. I mean, I know.
Yeah, I think.
Go on, mate.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think sometimes, no matter how much preparation you do, no matter what you do and how well you think the performance is going to go and how much planning you do, sometimes psychologically, as a collective, the group just don't do it for whatever reason. I was a little bit concerned before the game, and I think I mentioned it on the last podcast, that how they would react to losing the Scholars game, which in my opinion they should have won, and I think most of the guys felt that they should have won that game. And they came up against a Keighley side who really, really went for it and decided they were going to put the Bears to the sword. And, it's one of those days where just, I guess, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And, psychologically, the players weren't necessarily, from what I gather, they put the effort in, but working just defensively, working together as a unit, it just didn't happen. And it's one of those games. What they need to do is just pick themselves up and move on to the next game. Look at what did go wrong and make sure it doesn't happen again.
And I think as well as everything that could go wrong went wrong, I think there were elements of the Keighley side of the story that actually made it quite a difficult time for the Bears to be going to Keighley. And it's, I know you and I have both caught up with Rachel in the aftermath of this game, because she obviously lives in Keighley and then travels to the Bears for all of our games, and she was able to fill us in on a bit more of that side of things. So for those who aren't aware, aside from the fact it was the 3rd anniversary of Danny Jones's death, it was the first match since that anniversary. Keighley's chairman, has announced in the lead up to the match that he was stepping down at the end of the month, and he's a very popular figure there, and that was raising lots of questions about what the future of the club might look like. And there was the fact that Keighley lost at home in a game that sounds very similar to the Bears game against the Scholars last week, a game they feel they should have won and they didn't, and they were quite heavily worked in training this week from what I gather. So it feels like there are a lot of things on the Keighley side that just all added up to equal them being absolutely fired up to give a big performance, and it just so happened that was against Bears. It does feel like, again, this is going to sound like we're trying to be overly positive, but it does feel like there have been a few instances this year where Bears have come up against teams who are coming into the game with something to prove. Like Bradford, for example. No, we weren't necessarily expecting the Bears to win that game, but Bradford lost the week before, so they were going to be extra fired up. The Widnes game, they had a load of players coming back from injury, and their coach was saying, right, show me why you should be in the team. And even Whitehaven, they'd won the week before a last minute game in their derby match, which had really fired them up as well. So again, I say it again, there was a lot of Sunday that wasn't good enough, but also there were some things that conspired against us which didn't help.
I think it'll even out over the season. The Bears, the frustrating thing when you see a result like the Keighley game is that I know those lads and that squad are much better than that. I know that they are very much capable of matching most teams in this division. Yes, they're going to come up against more experienced sides who, can draw on. Some sides have got Super League talent playing for them every week, and they're going to come up against some better teams and some full-time teams who are going to be better drilled. But for most teams in that league, the Bears can match them. Maybe not for a whole game, but for large parts of games. And the Bears are more than capable of picking up wins against, most of the teams in the league if they're just positive and everything works well together. There'll be occasions when the Bears come up against one of these teams and they're not fired up and they're not ready for it, and the Bears need to capitalise that and get the wins. It's going to happen at some point. They just need to make sure that they don't get their heads down from a result like this and come out firing next week against York.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only other thing I wanted to say as a follow-up to Sunday's game, I think I agree with you what you said earlier, Craig. Potentially there was a hangover from the Scholars game there, and I know Tom alluded to it in his interview as well, and we've said it before, but it's worth saying again. I think a win there would have been huge for the club and potentially a season changer. And I think looking ahead now, that's what Sunday's game has to be. That we have to see Keighley as the season changer. That has to be the bottom of the bottom. And the team has to, and I have confidence that they will. The team has to take responsibility and not let this happen again. And there are still 19 games left this season. That's an awful lot of time for these players and this group to show us as fans what they're about, and for them to show themselves what they're about as well, and to make sure that this 20th anniversary season is as good as it can be. So I think that's it from my point of view on this game. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I would just say I've witnessed some real unity and togetherness in the squad, and they do work hard in training. They work hard for each other, and you can see it on the team coach and the social events that they go to, that they all really get on well together, and they want to support each other, and they want to be as good as they can be. And as you say, there's a long way in the season to go. There's plenty of opportunities to pick up wins, and plenty of opportunities to really come together and get the results that they want.
Mm-hmm. So, not good on Sunday from the Bears, but it's history now. We draw a line and we move on, which is exactly what we're going to do with this show. So this is normally the point in the show where we ask Mr C all of your burning questions. But as I mentioned at the top of the programme, we're giving that feature a break this week because we are joined by a very special guest. He is a Rugby League Hall of Famer. He's the joint record caps holder for Great Britain. He's a decorated player. And he's now a somewhat outspoken but always entertaining pundit. That man is, of course, the one and only Scoey. Yes, really, coming up right now on this little podcast is us talking to the living legend, Garry Schofield.
Well, Scoey, welcome to Bare Necessities. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I know you're not a person to mince your words or hold back on your opinions, so let's have it. Coventry Bears, what do you think? What do you know about them? What do you think about them?
Well, if I'm honest with you, I don't know a great lot. And as I said, but my work colleague at Proper Sporting, Phil Kaplan, he went down to Coventry. By all accounts, he did a great job from a point of view with the hospitality when the Rhinos came down there. So, but if I'm honest, I don't know a great lot, and as everybody knows, from a point of view of expansion and all this sort of thing at times. But what I do applaud about these sides is that they're giving rugby league an opportunity. They're giving rugby league a chance, you know. So, but then when you look at some of the scorelines that are coming through, and then again when we look at what happened to Wales last week, you know, West Wales and there, and it's just a matter of, well, is there enough quality around from there where not just grow, but can they be competitive? So that's my issue with it all. Can they be competitive where people want to watch rugby league? Because rugby league is a great product. Rugby league is the best product around. Don't worry about that. But my problem is with it is are we going to get people to watch it? Is there going to be interest from the schools? Is there interest from a point of view where if they're not winning, then people are going to come and watch the great game?
Yeah, I guess one thing you might not know that might interest you. This year the Bears have changed their recruitment policy, so almost entire squad is Coventry based this year, which is a first for the Bears. So they've got a really strong link with the university, and they're starting to create pathways in the Midlands. Do you feel that's important for clubs like Coventry who are in non-traditional areas?
Well, of course it is. You know, that's and as you mentioned that word there, these got to be pathways where if anybody wants to become a professional sportsman, you know, hopefully they want to become professional rugby league players, then there's an opportunity where they can achieve their goal. You know, so yeah, I'm all for with development and pathways where people have got the opportunity to be professional sportsmen, and if they want to become professional rugby league players, that's even better. But again, it's just a matter of, it's not just a matter of becoming a professional sportsman, it's a matter of being competitive and making sure that you can do yourself justice and do the sport justice.
So you're getting to see quite a lot of League One this year through your work with the Cougars. What do you make of the division as a whole? Do you think it's working?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. Without a shadow of a doubt. Oh yeah, I do. And okay, when you look at the the bottom five side, and no disrespect to Coventry from there, but they're in that level. But one thing I can reassure you, certainly this division, if you don't bring your A game, you're going to get embarrassed. Yeah. And certainly, all right, when we look at the top 9 sides, if you don't bring your A game with them, then you're going to get turned over where you play away or you play at home. But the same again, if you don't bring the right attitude against the likes of Hemel and Coventry and the two Welsh sides and to London Scholars, then you're going to get turned over. So the League One is very, very competitive. And if you don't perform week in and week out, you're not just going to get turned over, you're going to get embarrassed.
Does the idea of expanding the game excite you much? So Coventry, Wales, Toronto, wherever else they pick next?
My worry is where the player's coming from.
Right.
My worry is where is the quality coming from?
Yeah.
You know, because I guess anybody can play any sort of sport, can't they? But we've got to make sure that the product is doing itself right. And
like you say, it's got to be competitive.
It's got to be competitive. And as I say, and you know, when you look at that scoreline last week, you know, we Wales at 144 zilts. When you talk about being competitive and doing the game justice, that is my main concern. And even now, when you look at on the bigger picture, when they're talking about the Super League now and going to New York and going and this sort of thing, well, where the players coming from? Yeah. Where's the quality players coming from? And one thing for sure, what I don't want to see journeymen from Australia, New Zealand, all over the world making these teams up. No, I don't. I want to see British players. I want to see quality British players given the opportunity, but it has to be the right quality of players.
How do you feel the game's changed since you were playing? Do you look at the game in 2018 and wish you were still playing, or was it better when you were playing?
No, I don't wish I was playing today. No, I would have so many fallouts with coaches because certainly the way that I played, and when you looked at the players in my era, when you looked at the Andy Gregorys and the Lee Crooks and the Henry Hanleys and the Sean Edwards and Joe Lydons and Tony Milers, we wouldn't have been allowed to express ourselves like we did nowadays. Yeah. No. So as everybody knows, the game has changed. You know, I would have so many fallouts, as I say, with coaches because the way that I played a lot of the cuff rugby league. I played from a point of view, I played what I saw, whether it's the chipping over the top or interceptions. So would I have enjoyed it? No, I wouldn't. But people keep saying as well, players from our era, as I've just mentioned, the great players from our era, would you have been out playing today's era? We'd have been out playing today's game quite easily, because the big difference is, in our day, we're only 5 yards away from each other, so you had to create opportunities, you had to create space. Nowadays, you're 10 yards away. So all we do is just 10 yards away, so realistically, we'd stand 10 yards deeper, so that gives us 20 yards to create opportunities. Tell you what, some of us could be out playing dinner suits, don't worry about that.
Do you wish you'd done more coaching, or are you enjoying the punditry side of it?
I enjoy my punditry, and I say obviously I'm here at Keighley Cougars now as the ambassador and working on the marketing side. From a coaching point of view, I had 2 goes at it. Didn't work out at Huddersfield, didn't work out at Barra, but my hardest philosophy was Obviously, I could play a little bit and I got to a level. So, but what I found it very hard was players couldn't do the basics. Professional rugby, can you believe that? Players, you had to try and tell them and coach them how to catch and pass and tackle and support. Well, you shouldn't have to do that. And that's what I found very frustrating. So if you're working on the basics and the fundamentals for professional players, then it's hard work. And I enjoyed the challenge. Would I do it again? One thing what I want to do in coaching, I want to get involved with like under-19 setups, and I'd like to be involved in the international setup, because I believe from that point of view, I took the ball under-19 to South Africa in 2010, and I was working with the best players. You don't coach them, you manage them. That's what you do with them. So I reckon I could be very, very good from a point of view by getting the best out of players by being a man manager. So that's what I like to be involved with. But as you well know, mate, I tell it as it is, and people don't like that. But anyway, that's the way it is.
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but just as this kind of quick fire thing, these are probably questions you get asked all the time. So just react as soon as you've heard the question. So, best teammate you ever played with?
Lee Crooks.
Toughest opponent?
Mal Meninga.
And your proudest moment in your career?
Proudest moment, Melbourne, 1992, 33-10 Australia. It won't happen again. And I say, the proudest moment in not just, as I say, from club level, but obviously international level. But yeah, proudest moment, yeah.
And I feel like I already know the answer to this, knowing what you like. But do you have any regrets?
No regrets at all. No regrets whatsoever. I wouldn't change anything, a single second for what I've done, for what I've achieved, for what I've said. Because one thing for sure, I'm very passionate about this great game of ours. I'm very, very passionate. And when you look at the experiences, what's been lost in our game, look at this from the players who I've mentioned. You look at our team from back in the 90s and the international side. Look how much experience the game has lost. We can't afford to do that. And all we want to do is put something back into this great game. But people won't listen to us because we offer an opinion. We offer an opinion, and people don't like people who want to offer an opinion to make sure it's for the good of the game.
And just one last thing, Gary. It's the Bears' 20th anniversary season. Have you got a birthday message for the Bears?
Oh, for the Bears, yeah. Just keep working hard. Keep doing everything what you're doing with a smile on your face. And hopefully what you want to achieve will be achieved.
Scully, thanks for your time.
Pleasure. Thanks, Benny.
So huge thanks to Scully for his time on Sunday, and some interesting stuff in there. Craig, what did you make of that as an interview?
I find it really interesting, really fascinating to hear him. And he came across as a really, really nice guy, actually. Yeah. And not really what I expected at all. Real credit to him for giving us an interview, and well done to you as well for asking some great questions there. As I said, I find it really interesting. He spoke a lot of sense, actually. I wouldn't necessarily agree with absolutely everything, but at his heart, and you can really tell, he loves rugby league and he wants it to succeed. And he wants the game to grow, but he wants it to grow in a sensible way, and making sure that there's young players coming through. And that's not something necessarily that's happening at the minute. A lot of Super League teams don't even run academies. A lot of them don't have a reserve side. If the sport is going to continue to grow, then across all of the rugby league pyramid, there needs to be development of players. I find it really interesting what he said about today's game, about the fact that he wouldn't want to play in it. I mean, I think we had a discussion fairly recently about Super League, where it's just become so structured, and teams play out their sets. They stick to what they know. There's very little off the cuff play. Defence is really on top in a lot of games. There's some blowout scores every now and then, but there's very little individual skill and talent on show at times. And there's a lot of stuff going on around the play of the ball where people are trying to win penalties to get the edge and everything else. So what we need to do as a sport is to get more Garry Schofields coming through, people who really add to the game and make it a spectacle. And I think we're in danger at the minute of, coaching overruling all the individual talent. I think there's been some comments recently about, halfbacks just not playing, playing a very structured game now, set pieces winning over from people just playing the ball off the cuff. So he makes a lot of sense in what he says there.
Yeah, and I can back what you were saying about him. He comes across as a nice guy in that interview, and he came across as a really nice guy in real life as well. You know, he didn't need to take the time to speak to me, and he went out of his way to make sure that we did get that interview done. And he was charming and very friendly after the game as well. So yeah, and I agree with you. I think there were lots of interesting points there. I really agreed with what he was saying about the expansion teams needing to be competitive and not just being created for the sake of being created. And like what you were just talking about, making sure the players are coming through and clubs are growing their own, as it were, as well. But yeah, like him or loathe him, wherever else you hear him, you have to agree that he talked a lot of sense in that interview, and he's a great character for the game as well. And it was real pleasure to have him on the podcast. So
yeah. I mean, I think on the expansion point, I had this perception that he maybe wasn't in favour of expansion, but that didn't come across at all. I think, if anything, he thinks that expansion clubs should probably have more support than they're getting, because they're not going to just magic players out of thin air. You know, they need time and space to develop as a club. And it was really positive to hear him talking about League One as well, considering at the high level he played at. You know, the fact that he's really enjoying watching League One and being involved in up at Keighley and watching all the games there, and the fact that he thinks it's such a competitive division as well is really positive to hear that.
Definitely. And Craig, you were being very modest there as well. I should point out to all the listeners that you did help with the question writing for that interview. It wasn't all me asking good questions. You contributed a good number of the good ones there. So yeah, you don't need to be so modest. So fear not, Ask Mr C will be returning next week. So if you've got a question that you're dying to ask my co-host, then of course, don't hesitate to get in touch. You can tweet us a question to @CovBearsPodcast using hashtag AskMrC, or you can use the contact form at covbearspodcast.com. And as always, we are very grateful to York's Tim for sponsoring this section. Right, it's almost time for us to make like a tree and get out of here, but not before a quick look ahead to this weekend's game, which is our rearranged match at home to those record-breaking York City Knights. The game is this Sunday? No, it's this Saturday, 12th of May. Don't go on Sunday. Go on Saturday, 12th of May at the Bus Park Arena, 3 p.m. kickoff. The bar's open in advance as usual, and you should definitely come on down. Craig, so York are many people's picks to get one of those promotion spots this year, and they certainly gave the Catalan Dragons a scare in the Cup recently, and that's not even mentioning the blowout against West Wales, which I think we've all heard about. And it feels like we're saying this every week when we look ahead to the next game, but this is going to be a tough game for the Bears, isn't it?
Yeah, it most certainly will be a tough game. I mean, they set a world record score 2 weeks ago. They are, they looked good in the latter half of the year last year. This year, they've looked fantastic. Their only defeat was a very narrow defeat against Bradford in a game which I think York felt they should have won. And they're really firing, and they're ruthless as well whenever they play. But saying that, they're coming down to the Butts Park Arena. The Bears will give it a good go, I'm sure. The Bears will be looking to put the Keighley game behind them. And if the Bears can be competitive in the first half, then, they'll give York a good game. And, I just want to see the lads score a few tries, defend well as a unit, make sure York know that they're in a game, so that they don't get their tails up and give it a good go to score a few points. But it's going to be a good day. I really would implore that anyone listening to come down to the game. I think the lads really could do with a big home support on Saturday. It is a Saturday game, so no going to work the next day. Can have a few beers after the game as well. So I'd implore anyone to come down. It's going to be a good day.
Yeah, backed, definitely. I mean, I was going to ask you what sort of reaction you wanted to see after last Sunday, but I'm guessing that's it. Score some tries, defend properly, and get that unity back.
Yeah, it's going to be, as you said, it's going to be a tough game for the Bears to get a win, and no one will be expecting them to get a win. But who knows in sport? They can turn it around. They just need to be in the game. York beat Toronto last year, didn't they? And no one would have expected that. So who knows in sport, and York will be coming in confident, but if the Bears are also confident and get York on a bad day, or the Bears play to the best of their ability, then they've got every chance of getting a positive result out of the game.
Yeah. Well, it's very much time to see what this team is made of. And all of you listening, can do the same by joining us at the Butts Park Arena this Saturday for the visit of the York City Knights. And as Craig said earlier, let's get down there, let's get behind the team, and let's help them get things back on the right path. Don't forget, we live at covbearspodcast.com. We're at covbearspodcast on Twitter. We're sponsored by the Bears Vice Presidents and York's Tim, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, all the usual spots. Please do subscribe, tell a friend, spread the word about this show. It all helps. And should also say that next week we'll definitely play our interview with the Rugby League historian and the host of the Rugby Reloaded podcast, Tony Collins. Promised to do that next week. I know we were saying we were going to play it this week, but then Garry Schofield came and made his appearance on the show, so we've bumped things around a bit. Craig, thanks as ever, and I'll see you on Saturday.
Yeah, thanks, mate. See you at the weekend.